So the first one is Evans-Pritchard and the correction of pre-logical thought. And what's pre-logical thought here? Pre-logical thought simply means that belief in the style of thinking or interpreting things that existed before scientific and analytical way of reasoning. That means the way Africans were thinking about things before they started bringing some scientific interpretations. Let's say, for example, when there's a thunderstorm, they might interpret it that it's as a result that the gods are angry, instead of knowing that it's a meteorological issue. Or whenever a woman is struggling to give birth, they might interpret it that as she must have done something evil in the past. That is why she's unable to conceive. Instead of noting that maybe she has fibroids or other hormonal imbalances. And also, when, let's say, somebody like in Nigeria, in Calabar people, I would say, before then, whenever they give birth to twins, it was said that it's evil spirit, they will go and kill the children. Not knowing that twins, it's a normal thing for twins to be given birth to, just as a result of a single egg that was fertilized by a sperm that divided into two. But they didn't know all these things, they would just interpret it as it's as a result of an evil spirit. And then Evans-Pritchard introduced a metaphor of second spur to explain how the Azande people of Sudan interpreted mystical and natural causation. So the Azande people was the case study Evans-Pritchard used. So the Azande people, whenever, let's say, a hut collapses and kills somebody, the first way they interpreted it in two ways, the first spur and the second spur. The first spur was noting that maybe it's as a result of termites that have eaten some of the wood. That means the wood is no longer strong. That what made it to collapse. And the second spur is maybe it could be a witch that made that thing to happen, to collapse and kill that person. Just as in the same way, whenever somebody has an accident somewhere, it might be interpreted that he was driving wrongly and somebody recklessly hit him. That's the first spur. And the second one might be that maybe it's some village people that don't want to see him progress in the city. They are the ones that made that to happen. So Evans-Pritchard made it known that the Azande people already have their own way of interpreting things before they bring the scientific way. That means that they were able to interpret things logically in their own ways before the Western colonization. So that does not mean that their interpretation is wrong, but it just means that it is different from the Western way of doing things. Then the second one by Godfrey Lienhead. Godfrey Lienhead's Divinity and Experience offered a more nuanced phenomenological approach to the religion of Dinka. And these Dinka people are also said to be in South Sudan. So, Lienhead moved away from the rigid sacred profane dichotomy proposed by Durkheim, arguing that the Dinka moved fluidly between these spheres. So, Godfrey was able to use a phenomenological approach, that is, keeping aside his own Western prejudices and studying the Dinka people the way they really were, noticing that it is not only the sacred versus profane, that means how people interpret things that are meant to be seen as holy, and the ordinary things, the ordinary and the extraordinary. He meant to say that they were already living between these two things, managing how they live their life in between them. So, building Lienhead suggested that Dinka's power might be understood as representations or images which correspond to various complex combinations of Dinka experiences rooted in social and physical environment. He also noted the blasé attitude of the Dinka towards ritual efficacy, recognizing that while they made sacrifice for healing, they also understood that divinity can refuse. And what is this blasé here? It's a French word that is borrowed in the English, simply meaning when you become too familiar with something and you don't, it doesn't like fascinate you any longer. You don't get like too interested in it again. So the Dinka people had this attitude because they already used to performing rituals. So at some point they don't really feel much enthusiasm in it anymore. And the symbolic centrality of cattle. Then has further corrected the simplistic view of African material culture by showing that cattle were not just economic assets but ultimate symbols of Dinka culture and religion. So we can see that these people here believe they held their cattle in great esteem, just like the Fulani ethnic group in Western Africa. They also have a lot of cattle, and I think they bring it to have cattle. So the Fulanis, I would say, they see it as a totem. So they safeguard the cattle a lot, take good care of them. It's not that they worship them, but they just held them. They respect them as something that kind of connects them to their creator. And then Victor Turner, the symbolic architecture of ritual. The study of African religion further involved the work of Victor Turner, whose research among the Ndembo of Zambia focused on symbolic dimensions of ritual. Turner corrected the functionalist tendencies to reduce religion to its social utility, arguing instead that symbols possessed their own multivocal or polysemous power. And what is this multivocal or polysemous power here? It simply means that the rituals they perform can be interpreted in different ways, depending on how you say it. That means the early writers must have interpreted the first rituals the Ndembo people were making in a wrong manner because they were saying it in a different way. So, liminality and anti-ritualism. Turner's work also explored the concept of liminality, the state of being betwixt and between social rules during a rite of passage. This analysis showed that African rituals were not just about social stability, but about this transformation of self and the navigation of social stresses and strain, such as the tension between matrilineal and virility. So this liminality here is simply like the in-between time. So it's like the in-between time. So it's just like us now, we can say that we are in a liminal stage because we are no longer among the native and we are not already among the priesthood. So we are in between. We are still about to become priests, so we are just in between. So that's.
You are about to become priest or you go back to where you were.
No, we are about to become priests. So we are in between. So this is the liminal stage that Victor Turner is talking about here. And he also went on to talk on the tension between matrilineal and virility. And matrilineal here meaning that some of these cultures trace their children trace their roots through the mothers. For example, the Akan culture in Ghana, they believe the child belongs to the mother instead of the father somehow. And this virility here means in a condition of marriage, who is to move to whose house. But like me, growing up around West Africa, I already know that whenever there's a marriage, it was always the wife that moves to the husband's house. It was when I came here, I heard that the people in Malawi, what was it called? The Chewa, that it's the man that is supposed to move to the wife's house, which is kind of strange. Or the first time I get to hear about it. And then the high God debate and the charge of Hellenization, as later Western writers and Western trained African scholars sought to correct the savage levels of the past, a new intellectual problem emerged. The tendency to Christianize or Hellenized African deities. This debate centered on the degree to which African concepts of divine were reshaped to align with Western monotheistic expectations. So here it is trying to say that the